These coins are very good. That is to say, well-made facsimiles, as we call them.
What? I don't give a fuck what you call them. I want to know what they're fucking worth.
Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yeah, that name probably didn't help with its marketing.
Curva!
Although you could argue that it does have a fairly sizable audience in the medieval enthusiast community, and perhaps the role-playing community, very few people in the mainstream gaming world know about this brilliant masterpiece. It was developed by Warhorse Studios, a Czech video game developer which was acquired by Plaion only a year after the release of KCD. Now, for me, being a hardcore fan of anything remotely medieval, its absolute breathtaking world was what sucked me into this game. Aside from being a sizable world, its main quality is the realism. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's considered the most realistic depiction of a medieval environment in all media, not just role-playing games. Everything from the architecture to the forests, pastures, armor, weapons, people, and clothing. Although a few main characters didn't have the most realistic of medieval clothes. But that's excusable. They need to stand out somehow. And you bet your ass this game tells a great story which is complemented with some of the best character writing and voice acting I've ever seen in a video game. You start out as the son of a blacksmith in a fairly peaceful town where you're up to no good. At the start, the quests are basically you fetching stuff and doing shenanigans with your good-for-nothing friends. But somehow the game manages to immerse you in this world in such a way that every single quest at the start, no matter how uninteresting it sounds on paper, feels like it has weight and above all enjoyable. Now, this immersive quality is by far the most crucial aspect for me in a role-playing game. When a game makes you feel like you're a real person in that world, that nothing feels out of place because everything makes sense, everything is calculated and accounted for, where the big picture and small picture come together to form the whole picture. And again, KCD does this masterfully with its realism, attention to detail, story, characters, and combat. And if you got this far into the video, keep watching because I'm going to talk about combat in a bit and you don't want to miss it, trust me. Now, I think it's important to acknowledge that the game was by no means perfect. The launch was brutal, and probably what prevented it from reaching the audience it deserved. When it first released in 2018, it had a lot of frequent game-breaking bugs and excessively long loading times, especially on the PS4 and Xbox One versions. And it does have a few flaws even when it comes to the realism. Maybe not noticeable by the average person, but definitely a medieval enthusiast like me. But credit where credit is due, the developers did fix the vast majority of the game's bugs, and by the time I played it in 2021, it only had minor bugs that are for the most part unnoticeable. But despite all of this, Kingdom Come Deliverance for me provides one of the best role-playing experiences out there. Not because it's perfect, but because it models itself after the ideal. There is an ideal role-playing game out there in the theoretical world, and KCD is one of the few RPGs that made an undeniable effort at getting close to it. Now, time to talk about the combat, and this is where this game really stands out. Unlike almost all role-playing games out there, where you're basically a god, in God of War quite literally, where you fight multiple opponents at the same time, opponents 10 times your size, and humans are basically training dummies that can barely move. In KCD, the combat mechanics, first of all, are unlike anything I've ever seen before. They're based on actual 15th century sword fighting techniques, and on top of that, you're fighting in first-person mode, which is the only POV available, and I guarantee that at the start you will absolutely hate the combat in this game. It's so freaking frustrating and may actually lead you to quit the game. I didn't even like first-person mode in games until I played KCD, and I actually quit the game for a while before I came back and really started appreciating how innovative it is. Because even though it feels very janky at the start and opponents feel like main bosses in Dark Souls games, which I'm sure anyone who fought this old bastard knows what I'm talking about, once you take training lessons from select characters in the game and slowly level up your weapons and armor, you can actually start to fall in love with the challenge this combat system offers. And the whole playing experience of this game is based on skill trees that you have to level up. The weapons skill trees, alchemy skill tree, lockpicking, hunting, etc. Now, the more you level up these skill trees, the easier the activity gets. But when it comes to combat, your gear also plays a significant role. So no matter how leveled up you are, it'll still prove extremely difficult to take on an opponent that has a better kit than you, and you'll most likely die. On top of that, forget about taking on multiple opponents at the same time. They will absolutely ravage you, unless they're a bunch of peasants wearing rags and holding pitchforks. Then if you're better kitted, you do have a chance against multiple opponents. But in the late game, if you master the combat and have amazing gear, you can actually start to take on multiple enemies that are heavily armored, but only if you know what you're doing and approach the fight with a strategy, which brings us to the next aspect of the combat. In this game, you cannot just regenerate health in a fight like you do by eating in The Witcher 3, for example. On top of that, the health and stamina bars are not separate. Stamina regenerates on its own when you are not striking or defending, but you can only regenerate as much as your health bar allows. The lower your health bar, the less stamina you can regenerate. Not only that, there are many debuffs that apply to you when you get hit. Bleeding, which you have to stop by using a bandage or you will slowly bleed to death, and injuries which apply to body parts. You can't run with an injured leg, wielding a sword isn't easy with a broken arm, etc. And that is just the combat system in KCD. There are many more aspects in the game that involve a skill tree, which only makes the game less stale. If you're sick of combat, there is horse riding, alchemy, stealth, lockpicking, hunting, and more. Now I suppose that's all I wanted to say about this masterpiece, and if you do decide to give it a try, just keep all of this in mind and you will definitely have an amazing experience. If you like this video, I'd appreciate a like, subscribe if you like the content, and let's have a chat in the comments. See ya.